Yep, it's a whiteboard video. So today we're going to talk about the 1955 Le Mans disaster. Now, if you don't know what the Le Mans is, it's 24 hours of Le Mans. Essentially, it is whoever can drive their car the furthest distance in 24 hours. So most races, it's like the Indianapolis 500, where you race as fast as you can to finish 500 miles. That is difficult to do. It's difficult to design a car that can last going fast for 500 miles. It's even more difficult to design a car that can both go fast and last 24 hours continuous driving. So the 1955 edition of the 24-hour of Le Mans was expected to be an exciting race between Ferrari, Jaguar, and Mercedes. And as we're getting into the race, there were two drivers who were really taking it. There was Mike Hawthorne and Vic Fangio. But the specific moment of the actual disaster itself involves three cars. Now, the 1955 Le Mans disaster is important because it is the deadliest motorsports accident in history by a lot, like by far. The outcome of this led to multiple countries banning motorsports for the next year. It actually led to Switzerland banning motorsports until 2022. So this was a big deal. So our three drivers involved in this accident were Mike Hawthorne in the green number 6. He was driving a Jaguar. Lance Macklin in the blue number 26, who was driving an Austin Healey, who was in a lower class, and then Pierre Levay, number 20, who was driving a Mercedes-Benz, who was also in the upper class. So to understand what exactly happened here, we need to look at our layout of our track. This is the front portion of the track. If you look right here, this is the grandstands in the very front. Just down here off screen is where the start-finish line was. And this right here is the start of pit road. Now, if you watch motorsports, you can see pit road right here. If you watch motorsports, you'll know that pit road is generally set off of the track behind its own wall. There's a deacceleration lane so that cars that are going into the pits can pull off to the side, slow down, so that they can get into their pit safely. In 1955 at Le Mans, there was no deceleration lane. There wasn't even a pit lane. It was literally just boxes on the side of the raceway. As soon as your pit was done, you pulled directly back out on the racetrack and attempted to get going as fast as possible. If it sounds incredibly dangerous, that's because it was. So, we have our three drivers. The thing about this is that this was 1955, so there were various different levels of technology for vehicles. And the first thing that we need to know, aside from this is the track, this is the direction of the race, you can see direction of race, they're going this direction. Each of the cars had different brake systems. So at the time there were two different brake systems. There's disc brakes and there's drum brakes. Disc brakes are what's usually, for the most part, used on vehicles now. So I'm going to draw this real quick to give you guys an idea. So starting with disc brakes, you have your rotor in the middle right here, like this. And then on either side of this rotor, you have a brake pad. Here, we'll put our brake pad in red. You have your brake pad on either side of the rotor. So when you press on the brake, we'll make that a little bit bigger. So you have your rotor here. On either side of the rotor, you have your brake pad. Brake pad there, brake pad there. So when you press on the brakes to slow down, it squeezes these brake pads this direction against this rotor, and the friction of these brake pads coming together, like this, causes the vehicle to slow down. That is what is standard in most vehicles today. There's a couple vehicles that apparently still make drum brakes for some reason, but we'll go into drum brakes. So in drum brakes, it's a similar concept, but slightly different. So on your tire, you have a giant box, and inside that box, you have your brake pads, like this. But instead of your brake pads pushing against the rotor, they push outward towards the outside of the drum, like so. Now, if you were thinking, hey, friction creates heat, And if you have your brake pads encased in a drum, where is all of your heat going to go? It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to sit inside this drum. So the advantage of these brakes, the disc brakes, is that as these heat up from creation of friction, the heat dissipates away, up and out, and it doesn't cause the brake pads to heat up significantly. What happens with drum brakes is if you slam on your brakes and attempt to stop from a high rate of speed, it will build up a bunch of heat inside of here and it will cause your brakes to start to fail and you won't be able to stop. They'll start to slip. So you have to slowly go down on the brakes and slowly slow down. You can't slam on your brakes like you can with disc brakes. Cars in the field at the time were kind of a mix between disc and drum. Specifically in our vehicles here, Mike Hawthorne had disc brakes. Lance Macklin had drums brakes. Pierre Levay had drum brakes. Will be important later. The other thing is that specifically for Mercedes, since they were in a significantly higher racing class, their cars were moving significantly faster, they knew that this was a problem. They knew the drum brakes could fail and cause their driver not to be able to stop their car. So they designed something. We're going to draw a car here. Okay? So you have your tires, You have your hood, right? What they decided was that on the back of the car, they were going to add what was called an air brake. It was essentially a trunk that opened backwards. So your airflow comes across the top of the car like this, right? If you pop this air brake, this brake creates drag, and as you're stepping on the brakes in here, this air brake also helps create drag that will assist in slowing the car down. Why they didn't just go with disc brakes, I don't understand, but that's what they decided to do. They added this little hood thing on the back that would fling up like this so that air drag would create and help slow the vehicle down. That is that. So, as we're getting into our race, we have our three drivers. We have Mike Hawthorne in his green number 6. We have Lance Macklin in his blue number 26. And we have Pierre Levay, who is actually in a silver car, but silver, I don't have a silver marker and it probably wouldn't show up well, so we're going to use black for him. So as they're coming down this track, Mike Hawthorne is moving at a significantly faster speed than Lance Macklin. And Lance Macklin knows it. So he moves towards the inside of the track right here to get out of Mike Hawthorne's way so that he can go by because he's rapidly coming up on him like this. Macklin moves down this direction towards the inside of the track. Hawthorne goes up and around him like that to pass him. Right? Makes total sense. He's moving slower. He doesn't want to be a holdup. He doesn't want to get hit, so he moves out of the way. As we move down the track a little bit further, we have Hawthorne in front, right here. We have Lance Macklin, who's just behind him, like this. Actually, let me adjust where Hawthorne is here just a little bit. Hawthorne's more in this area. Hawthorne is coming up on this curve to go towards pit road. And he can see his crew members over in the pit waving him down, telling him he needs to go in and top off on gas and get a change of tires. So he, having his disc brakes, slams on his brakes because he's traveling at a high rate of speed. He slams on his brakes and dives this direction. But the problem is that Lance Macklin is directly behind him because he just got past and he has those drum brakes. He knows that if he slams on his brakes the same way, he is going to either have to rear end Mike Hawthorne because he can't stop, put his car in the wall here to avoid hitting Mike Hawthorne, or swing it this direction to go back out onto the track to avoid hitting the back of Hawthorne. So what he elects to do in this situation, which I really can't blame him, is he elects to save his car and swings it back out this direction. Unfortunately, at the exact same time, Pierre Levay, who we haven't yet talked about, is coming through in his Mercedes-Benz at a very high rate of speed in the middle of the track. So he comes through here, And as soon as Lance Macklin swings his car back out into the center of the track, Pierre Levay collides with the back of his car. So we'll rearrange our cars here. So Macklin swings out like this to go around Hawthorne, who has put his car down here. Pierre Levay is coming up at a rapid rate of speed. He hits the back corner of Macklin's car. What that does is it picks his car up, launches it in the air, and he gets fully airborne, goes over this wall right here, which is, we're actually a little bit further down here. We're more in this general area. That's not a rectangle. It is a rectangle. It's just not a rectangle that is proper. Hawthorne's down here, completely oblivious to everything that is going on around him. This picks Pierre, his car ramps up off of the back of Macklin's, catches air, collides with a wall right here, goes up in the air, lands on top of this wall right here, flies into the grandstands, hits a concrete staircase, and it hits the concrete staircase so hard that it rips his engine out of his car and sends it flying into these stacked grandstands right here. It rips the air brake off of the back of his vehicle and frisbees it across the grandstands full of people right here and causes several beheadings. The rest of his car launches up in the air. This isn't an actual wall, it's just a pile of dirt that has some advertisements on it. His car ends up tumbling over. It lands on top of the wall in this general-ish area and bursts into flames. The problem with that is that the Mercedes-Benz car at the time was made of a magnesium alloy, and that magnesium alloy burned really, really, really well. And so what you need to put out magnesium is a lot of sand. Unfortunately, they didn't have a lot of sand, and if they spray it with water, it would just continue to get worse. So his car literally sat here 4 hours and burned. Not 4 hours, like several hours, like 7 or 8 hours, and just sat there and burned as the race continued on past the burning car. Pierre Levay himself was launched out of his vehicle and landed in the middle of the road right about there, just along the wall. He died instantly as soon as he hit the ground. When his car launched over the wall and went through the standing area of the grandstands, his tires kept spinning, and they pulled several people who got caught in his tires and launched them out into various locations along the track and landed dead. Lance Macklin, his car hit the outside wall, then spun back across here, hit the inside wall, and if you watch video of the actual crash itself, he just barely misses a cameraman, hits the inside wall, and then ricochets back across and hits the outside wall again. He immediately jumps out of the car because he's terrified it's going to burn, to catch on fire. He's going to burn to death inside of it. One of the things that you'll notice if you watch the video is that none of these drivers are wearing seatbelts, and none of them are wearing helmets. That is specifically because if you were a race car driver in the 40s and 50s, if you didn't finish the race, your odds of burning to death inside your car was incredibly high. And many of them believed that it was better to be launched out of the car and die in a collision with the ground than it was to burn to death inside their vehicles, which I kind of can't blame them. Macklin survives. Hawthorne pulls into his pits, finally looks behind him and realizes what is going on, and is completely inconsolable. Pierre Levay lands there. He is 100% dead. At least 81 people in the grandstands have died. They had 63 confirmed deaths, so they had their accident, they started to do cleanup. They had 63 confirmed deaths within 30 minutes of the accident happening. Now, if you do disaster response or anything like that on mass casualties, having 63 confirmed deaths in 30 minutes it's wild. That doesn't happen. It takes significantly longer to have a confirmation of death. there was so much death and destruction from this accident because all of the big major pieces of Pierre Levay's car ripped out and landed in the grandstands that they were able to tell within 30 minutes that 63 people were dead. It was like, within 6 minutes, it was 20 people. It is absolutely crazy. In the aftermath, so his car is burning. Macklin hops out of his car and runs across the pit road. Hawthorne is out in the pits unconsolably crying. There is a guy who is next up to race, who, as he's standing there getting ready to race, a person from the stands, a person in the grandstands' body gets launched out of the grandstands by Levay's car, tires spinning, lands in front of him in the pits. That guy's car pulls up. It's his turn to drive because the driver who's in is ready to take a break. He steps over the dead body, gets in the car, and continues driving. They would end up finishing the race because, for a number of reasons. Number one, the big reason that they were concerned was that they thought that if they called off the race, then all of the other locations around the track where spectators would evacuate the track at the same time, so they couldn't get ambulances to the injured people. The other reason was, this is a direct quote, the British had an air disaster and they didn't stop their show during a race, so why should we? Because it's in France. And then the last one, this is a direct quote, the race director said, the race must go on. So they continued racing. None of the drivers on the track who were still racing had any idea how bad it was because Pierre Levay's car is burning right here on the wall. But just on the other side of the front stretch, another car had flipped over and was on fire and was burning. And that car was fine. The driver, they could see as they were driving by that the driver was standing next to it and was fine. So they thought this was just another accident. Now, race officials did tell them to slow down to 55 miles per hour as they were going through this direction. Absolutely none of them listened to it. Not a single one of them listened to it. Additionally, it took a little over, so the crash happened in the early evening, right around 7 p.m. It took until about 1 a.m. before Pierre Levay's replacement driver convinced Mercedes-Benz that they needed to withdraw from the race because a German automaker winning a French race after a French driver died in the race, 10 years after the end of World War II would be a really, really bad look. So they withdrew from the race. They actually entirely withdrew from auto racing until 1984. They asked Jaguar if Jaguar would withdraw from the race, and Jaguar essentially told them to go pound sand. So that didn't go super well, but it ended up killing 81 spectators, at least 81 spectators. Pierre Levay, the one driver. There are some sources that say it killed 83 spectators and one driver. It's kind of debated up and down as to which number is the correct one. It was and still is the deadliest motorsports accident in history by far. Like by far. There's nothing else that comes even close.